90% of people do not get enough sunlight. However, the sun is one of the 5 most anabolic things. For those who do not know what anabolic means, we call the things that make you grow and develop in bodybuilding anabolic. But of course, this is not its only benefit. The sun has so many benefits that it was necessary to make a whole video, and I compiled it for you with research. Remember, knowledge is power, so learning this video will benefit all your goals. The most anabolic thing after steroids is sleep. Then testosterone, water, and sun. The sun has a direct effect on adding muscle. I will explain how it works towards the end of the video. However, the sun is a weapon that will have a direct effect in bodybuilding. It also plays a very strong role in fat burning. It has a direct effect on brain, mental health, and hormones. And of course, it has an incredibly big effect on health. So how does the sun increase your power? It increases the size of your fastest fibers and the amount of faster fibers you have. Remember how important this is for explosive power fights. The power of fighters comes from this explosive power. It has been proven to improve your performance, recovery, and glycogen synthesis. Also, a note on performance. They have done studies on athletes and found that athletes' performance is generally related to the optimum amount of sunlight we receive. And the more sunlight they receive, the more their performance reaches its peak. So it is not only related to the level of vitamin D in the blood, but also to sunlight. Let me give you an interesting piece of information. Testosterone levels drop to their lowest levels in the winter months. The reason for this is the sun. Understand the power of the sun. Secondly, let's talk about myostatin. The lower myostatin, the more strength and muscle you can add. This is true not only in animals, but also in humans. This is where the sun comes into play. It is not that easy to lower myostatin. Anything that increases testosterone and IGF-1 will automatically lower myostatin. And anything that increases your stress will increase myostatin. Now let's come to the most important one in my opinion. Daylight can directly improve sleep. I will give an example from my own life. I'm sure you've all had sleep problems at one time or another. Maybe you still do. And once your sleep pattern is disrupted, it's not easy to fix. When I had serious sleep problems, I still couldn't fix them despite trying everything. However, I came across another study. Neurologist Andrew Huberman said that getting plenty of sunlight in the morning was the #1 thing in making you sleepy at night. I went out in the morning and took a 30-minute walk just to get some sun, and I really fell asleep easily that evening. When you look at it, it's really unbelievable how simple and powerful it is, but the sun is so powerful. That's why testosterone levels have been decreasing since our ancestors. Because you've been looking down on simple things and turning to ridiculous testosterone boosters, and taking them as a supplement instead of buying them from their main source, and that's why testosterone is decreasing. However, what we need to do is follow the science and make the most powerful versions of what we see as simple. Dopamine is a really powerful hormone, and guess what improves dopamine? Of course, the sun. Dopamine is the most important key to your motivation, willpower, and staying mentally strong. Also, dopamine drop can decrease not only your mental health, but also your hormones like testosterone. So what is the solution? Daylight. In fact, there is no need to even research for this. We all know that whenever summer comes and you go out into nature or go to a beach, you will feel happy and energetic. You will feel more energetic and positive. Songs have been written just for summer. This is completely the positive effect of the sun on our hormones. Also, the sun will increase not only your happiness hormones like dopamine and serotonin, but also your testosterone problem. Wait, it's not over yet. The main weapon of steroids that provide muscle growth is protein synthesis. In other words, the more protein synthesis, the more development. This is what anabolic steroids do. The sun increases this protein synthesis, and I think this is the most important of them all. So never underestimate sunlight when it comes to strength, willpower, and muscle building. In fact, if you look at people in Africa, you will see that these people have crazy genetics when it comes to muscle. These people dominate all sports that require fast twitch fibers. This is not a coincidence or just hard work. It is the effect of the sun. But that is a subject for another video. If you want a video about genetics, you can specify it in the comments. So what is the effect of the sun on fat burning? It helps insulin sensitivity. In other words, it is good for hunger pangs, sweet cravings, I can say that it prevents you from getting diabetes. It reduces inflammation, which is very important. Also, getting sunlight indirectly increases fat burning, because when you assume that you go for a walk to get sunlight, you activate thermogenesis. If you stay home all day, believe me, you are not burning enough calories. So I have listed all these benefits. But how does this work? What exactly is going on behind the scenes? Let me explain. Let's start with sunrise. UVB rays are strongest between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. Of course, this varies depending on where you are in the world. Then it comes into contact with your skin and turns into 7-dehydrocholesterol. This turns into vitamin D3 using your skin. In other words, your skin converts cholesterol into vitamin D3 using sunlight. That's why we call vitamin D a hormone, not a vitamin. There are differences between races in the time it takes to pass through the skin. But I won't go into these details, and I'll tell you how to take it, and how much to take in a moment. You ask me a lot. How should we take vitamin D3? With magnesium. With vitamin D3K2 or on its own. You can also get vitamin D3 from your diet. However, you will never get as much as the sun gives you. The same goes for supplements. You will understand why in a moment, but of course you can if you want to take it additionally. So how much should you take? The most appropriate dose is at least 5,000 IU. Of course, this can increase depending on your age and body fat percentage. It should be a maximum of 30,000 IU. Below that, there is no problem. If the source of this is the sun, that is, if you overdose with supplements, then there may be a problem. So, always consult your doctor. I am talking about getting it from the sun in these products. In some studies, they did not experience any problems despite taking 60,000 international units for a year. This may vary depending on your skin and fat rate. So how much does the sun give? We can say 25,000 IU if you stay for less than an hour on average. Well, if we look at the sources, fish is the most abundant source, but it is not enough. If we assume that you cannot eat a kilo of salmon every day, it is a difficult option, because salmon has the highest amount. It is usually 1,000 IU as a supplement. It is not enough. Some may have 5,000 IU. The choice is yours, but my suggestion is definitely to get it from the sun. You can take supplements as an additional source, but the main source should be the sun. If the sun is the main source, you will get it in a short time, and it has a very high bioavailability. In other words, you can get 10,000 IU in just 15 minutes. If you go out at the right time of day, of course, I mean between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. So what are the negative aspects of getting sun exposure? You can't use sunscreen. Otherwise, 98% of these rays will also be blocked and will not pass through to your skin. Therefore, it will not be beneficial. In other words, you can't use sunscreen. Too much clothing will also prevent it from passing through to your skin. You shouldn't be black, but let's say you are very dark. Then I can say that you need more sun. If you are old, you need more. Because your skin will work slower in vitamin D3 synthesis. Most of the reasons why old people get cancer, have increased insulin sensitivity, have increased bone problems, and experience muscle shrinkage are related to vitamin D. The fatter you are, the more of a problem it is, because the sun will stick to your fat tissues. So lose weight and don't go on low-fat diets. Because vitamin D needs fat. Forget magnesium and K3. The real important thing is fat. Because vitamin D will be useless without fat. And of course, your daily magnesium consumption should be sufficient. So why are so many useful things so unknown and ignored? Because they can't make money on this subject. The media needs things that make money. The same goes for water. Water is incredibly anabolic, but it's not talked about much. Because, as I said, they can't make money on this subject, friends. In short, don't underestimate the sun and apply what I say. You'll see the results yourself. Stay healthy and strong.